Most people are unaware of who this man is, but that's because he caused such extensive damage to US security that the government has tried to obscure and prevent publications on the matter. They've succeeded to a great extent. We still don't know as much as we'd like to about this case. However, what we are aware of could have not only brought down the West, but the entire world with it. This is the story of Clyde Lee Conrad. There was nothing particularly remarkable about Clyde as a young man. Born in 1948, he grew up in Sebring, Ohio. In an unfortunate incident involving an axe, Conrad lost part of his middle finger. Conrad was a reasonably quiet student but got excellent grades nonetheless. However, his close friend, David Garlock, remembers that he had a dark side. He had different values at times. When he got angry, he would become quiet and start to whisper. I'd be afraid of him when he went down to a whisper. Where Mr. Conrad lettered in track and field and rifle, his track coach loved the young athlete and remembered him as one of the nicest guys around. Soon after graduating, Clyde enlisted in the Army. It was August 9, 1965, and the United States was just beginning to deepen its involvement in the Vietnam War. Conrad was sent to Vietnam, where he saw combat. He contracted malaria and returned to the US to recuperate. After his service in Vietnam, Clyde was posted to West Germany. He was tasked with safeguarding the NATO and US military plans drawn up for the eventuality of an all-out war with the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. The documents he had access to included other susceptible information. For example, the locations and specifics of troop maneuvers, the overall diplomatic and military NATO strategy, and the location and specifications of nuclear weapon sites in Europe and elsewhere. The information revealed through these documents was so damaging that in his 1992 court testimony, the Commander-in-Chief of the European Command said that this information gave the Warsaw Pact enough of an advantage, noting that the defeat of the United States would have been assured if it came to all-out war on the continent. The problem started in 1975 when Conrad met Sergeant First Class Zoltan Szabo, who his military supervisor introduced him to. What his supervisor didn't realize, though, was that Zoltan was also a member of the Hungarian Secret Service, having worked for them since 1967. He turned after serving honorably in Vietnam. The Americans didn't know that Zoltan also served as a colonel in the Hungarian military intelligence. Conrad began to work with other Hungarian agents, including the brothers Imre and Sandor Karesic. Conrad soon began to deliver information from vaults filled with top-secret documents he had been charged with protecting. His method was to take sensitive documents off the base of the 8th Infantry Division and copy them by hand. Conrad would then destroy the documents rather than return them. The courts tracked the amounts the Hungarian Secret Service paid Mr. Conrad. They found payments amounting to $1.2 million. That was his price for selling out his country. There seems to have been no ideology here, only greed. Though there is every chance that he received more, the courts could only prove a little. However, he kept many golden bars in a Swiss bank deposit box, so he was handsomely paid. But as we can see, some other members came far cheaper. While Conrad was recruited through Szabo, he outshone his command regarding his contribution to Soviet bloc espionage. He produced high-level documents and became a trustworthy source for Hungarian intelligence and, through them, the KGB. Within a few years, Conrad created his spy ring to deliver further information on NATO allies. Much of the ring's activity remains classified today. In addition, the CIA believes that several key members were never caught, but we do know the names and identities of some of those who participated. Among them was Roderick James Ramsey, an army sergeant stationed in Bad Kreuznach, West Germany. He joined the army in 1981 and was stationed there in 1983, where he was soon brought into the ring. This individual was paid just $20,000 over the 3 years he worked for Hungarian intelligence. Ramsey, in turn, brought Jeffrey Gregory into the fold. Others soon joined. including Jeffrey Rondeau and Kelly Therese Warren. Ramsey later claimed that the number of other members in the ring reached the double digits and included an officer who would later become a general. To this day, we still don't know just how many people were a part of it. A key addition to the ring was Kelly Therese Warren, an administrative assistant deployed in the section handling war plans for the Army's 8th Infantry Division. Ramsey recruited her because she had easy access to classified documents as part of her job. Indeed, part of her role was to prepare classified documents for publication and distribution. She provided the most damaging information, including the full NATO battle plan. The state secrets were delivered to Conrad at a local church and bowling alley. Kelly did all this for a mere $7,000, which she used to pay off her personal debts. US intelligence had suspected a spy ring was active among US personnel in West Germany for quite some time. However, they lacked proof. They were first alerted to the problem by Vladimir Vasiliev, a CIA asset in the Soviet Union. He told his handlers that the Kremlin had access to US war plans at the highest classification levels. US Army counterintelligence launched a full investigation, and eventually, by the power of elimination, they discovered it was Conrad. His cover was blown by the luxurious standard of living that he had adopted. The spy had settled in Germany with his wife and 2 children and was living the good life. Meanwhile, the Hungarian brothers Sándor and Imre Kőszeg were arrested in Sweden in 1988. They cooperated with investigators and provided much of the information that would help convict Conrad. Therefore, they were only charged with possessing confidential information and served 18 months. Unfortunately, the US didn't have jurisdiction over Conrad, now retired and living abroad. So, the US Justice Department had to convince the German government to prosecute. In 1988, he was arrested and placed on trial for high treason and espionage. 2 years later, Conrad was convicted at the Koblenz State Appellate Court. The spy was sentenced to life in prison and fined over $1 million. The German Chief Justice was extremely angered by the magnitude of Conrad's crimes. He wrote, "If war had broken out between NATO and the Warsaw Pact, the West would have faced certain defeat. NATO would have quickly been forced to choose between surrendering or the use of nuclear weapons on German territory. Conrad's treason had doomed the Federal Republic to become a nuclear battlefield." Those are some heavy words. Others involved also drew significant sentences. Jeffrey Rondeau and Jeffrey Gregory were sentenced to 18 years each in 1994. Meanwhile, Kelly Therese Warren was sentenced to 25 years. But the man who started this whole ring got off incredibly easy, thanks to his own lawyer dream team. Szabo cooperated with the prosecution, testified, and identified the confidential documents. In return, the spymaster was given a 10-month suspended sentence. All in all, around 30,000 documents were delivered to the hands of Hungarian intelligence. There is no question that the vast majority were passed on to the KGB, which immensely enjoyed this wealth of information. Though Conrad and some of his co-conspirators had been brought down, many in the ring had not been caught, including Ramsey, one of the most important members of the spy ring. The breakthrough in capturing him came from an unlikely source, a small clue in a routine interview. On August 23, 1988, then FBI agent and top body language expert during the Cold War, Joe Navarro went to interview former Army Sergeant Roderick James Ramsey. They had no particular reason to suspect his involvement in anything. However, Navarro noticed an exciting and unexpected development when he mentioned Conrad as the interview subject. The investigator remembered the incident in his book. His cigarette shakes. Not the familiar jitters I've been seeing, but a good, hard tremor. Before the question, a velvety smooth contrail of smoke. 30 seconds afterward, smooth again. But in between, at the precise moment, the intel agent mentions Clyde Conrad's name, the contrail breaks up into a sharp zigzag that Rod has no more control over than his circulation. He was so sure that Ramsey was up to no good and that Conrad was involved that Navarro convinced his superiors to engage in a full-scale investigation despite the lack of compelling evidence. Over the next year, Navarro pretended to befriend Ramsey and gathered as much as possible. The FBI agents called the operation unprecedented in its aims and scope, believing it was the most extensive in the Bureau's history. The agent remembers this as a difficult time in his life. He was brought up to tell the truth and act morally, but he led a double life during that year, lying day after day to bring him down. In 1992, Ramsey was sentenced to 36 years in jail, finally being brought to justice after everything. Meanwhile, a decade after being convicted, Clyde Lee Conrad met his end in German prison at the age of 50 on January 8, 1998. Of all Americans convicted of espionage, Conrad is one of only 5 spies to have been considered to have made $1 million or more from spying, and if you want to know about the rest of them, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Thank you for watching.